Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? And is the video okay? Well, we'll get started. Um, Let me tell you what I've been sort of thinking about. Right now, anything you try to buy is like really expensive, and even I would say even for the prices they have are overpriced or hard to find. Hey, Mark, how you doing? What I thought would be something to do is to find, sort of rediscover some really good buys that aren't very good buys now, but sort of will, I think they will be after the everything recedes from these extremely high prices. And so this is what I'd like to talk about. Um, Let me start with one. Hi, Flippin' Zippo. Uh, the one I'm thinking of is that these are Patek Philippe gondolas that were made between about 2000, 2002, and 2009. Now, the important thing that happened in 2009, hi, Junior, what happened in 2009 was Owen. Uh, what happened in 2009 was that Patek Philippe decided, okay, we're going to put silicon in our movements, and so this is something. Now, I'm not sure how Patek Philippe buyers see that. Um, you have, I think, two basic kinds of Patek Philippe buyers. One type is somebody who just wants a really nice watch and they want to wear it a lot, and basically a very high end timekeeper. Okay, it looked good and so forth. And that's one type. The other type is a collector, and I'm not sure how collectors feel about the whole thing with silicon that they introduced after 2009. They're easy to tell which ones they are because the who was it? The foundation at Geneva Seal decided that, well, if you're going to put in silicon, you can't have you can't have the Geneva Seal. And so Patek Philippe had some big thing about, oh, we don't, who needs you, and sort of that was that. Hi, William. And but the thing of it is, at least to me, is that this sort of like, okay, Paul, I'm glad to hear that. Uh, the I guess the whole idea is that here's a watch that I really like. Patek Philippe got rid of the Gondolo line, by the way. And somewhere between that period, between 2000 and 2009, they also had this 51 series of movements. And these were shape movements, unlike a lot of the ones in some of the sort of pre 2000 or even early 2000 gondolas that were rectangular shape, but then they had a round movement in it. But the ones I'm talking about are have a 51 caliber of something. There are shape movements, some of which are very similar. There are a couple watches. I don't remember the numbers. Not one of these Patek Philippe number guys. I do know the 5124. This was one I've liked for quite a long time, but then I've discovered some other ones that also have the same movement as the 5124. They look nothing like it, and they are gondolas, and there are some that were available, but before 2009. And I'm sort of thinking that there may be some really good deals there. Now, if I were a guy who wanted a watch, I just wanted a fancy, nice watch to wear that kept good time and so forth, I'd probably go with the silicon. I mean, know, I think it's only some collectors like me who sort of like, oh, come on, I could have. You don't need to put silicon in your watch. You might as well keep a quartz watch if you're going to do that. That's my attitude, and it's not a good attitude. I'll put it that way. So, but here is sort of a subsection of Patek Philippe. They have the gondolas. They didn't sell very well. That's how come they got rid of the line. And so that's sort of the kind of thing. So the idea would be to go in there and see what we can find. And when the prices recede, because everything's up right now, and according to some people who pay more attention to that thing than I do, it is indeed receding. So this is what I wanted to throw out to you guys. That is that what are some watches like that they're ones that have really nice movements, but people don't pay attention to them. I mean, they're like, they don't really care about that. Now, let me say something else too. One of the things that I and a lot of other people in collections have really been onto have been the whole thing about in-house movements. Okay, in-house movements are fine, but I think the real reason they became somewhat important, the ETA movements, and a lot of them are excellent movements. What is it? The 2498, I think, or no, that's not it. That is one good one, but I forgot the name of the other one they have. It's very popular. There's two of them. One ends in 29-A2, and the other one ends in 24, I think. I forgot what the name of those movements are, but they're not bad movements. However, they're relatively inexpensive. And so companies that I always get upset with, like IWC and Breitling, and what is that noise? We've been having strange noises. Uh, anyway, so I'm thinking, all right, so here you have these there are movements out there somewhere that are doing something interesting. If they're in-house, that doesn't necessarily mean they're really good movements. There are a lot of movements in watches that are actually better than most in-house movements. You take, for example, uh, VMF, Voiture Manufacturer Fleurier. I think those movements are better than most movements. If you're, we got to have a movement, we got to have something we can call in-house, uh, and or that are sort of some copy of some other movement, make a few changes that makes it legitimate to say that they're in-house. So that's another one. That's another kind of watch that might be out there at a really good price, that they have a not an in-house movement, but a really good movement. In fact, I think the whole distinction between in-house and non-in-house is one that we might want to re-examine and simply change it to a really quality movement versus ones that are okay, but they're sort of like they're really not a lot of interesting horology in them. Okay, hey, Forbin, lease time. Let's see. Geezer, William, how are you? Captain Kirk, silicon is neither a metal nor a non-metal. Captain Kirk, thank you for that lesson. It's called a metalloid. Okay, check it in your your thing. It's the kind of the metals I'm talking about are transitional metals. If you like metalloids, that's fine. Arsenic is another metalloid that you might enjoy. Okay, so let's see if we've got some ideas of watches that have that kind of quality that may slip under the radar. That right now they have a relatively high price because everything has a high price right now. So it's your turn. I gave you one, the sort of 2000 to 2009 Patek Philippe's. Which ones do you guys have? Any one, just one. No, nothing. Come on, you guys can't sit there and listen to me for very long without. Hey, Captain Kirk, how about you? Flip and Zippo, Oh, you're thinking of silicone. Flip and Zippo. No. Ah, okay, there we go. But oh, come on, you guys. Okay, William, have you seen the piece of Invicta lately? No, I haven't. Hey, Richard, Vacheron Constantine Patrimony. Richard, I think that's a great one. Great idea. Some patrimonies. Now, there's sort of something I think we can refer to as, um, what is the word I'm looking for? Um, Pre-vintage, okay? And I would say that the ones from the early 2000s might sort of fit into that pre-vintage category. I don't know what is, if there is an official definition of vintage, but pre-vintage to me is if they're not vintage, they've got some new things that were added, and that's why I mentioned the 5111 as, and I don't know the number of the movement in it, but it's in a number of, and this is before they put in the silicon. A Hamilton with its 982. I don't know much about the 982 movement for, but let me say this about Hamilton. Nothing wrong with Hamilton or Longines or a lot of these other ones, but since Swatch was one of the three companies that went in and were building up the silicon hairsprings, a lot of the stuff coming out of Swatch may have silicon hairsprings. Flip and Zippo, and no, it's just you. And we're thinking about it without the E on the end. Jeez. Okay. Nothing. No, I think, are there any others like the Vacheron Constantin? Howard, hi Howard. People do project cars. Why not project watches? I'm familiar with the Gondolo and Cabaret. That's another good one. That's a great example, Howard, from movement. But I think GP is another maker with quality semi-vintage form worth overhauling, or at least taking a look at. Yeah, I agree. I think that the 1945 by Girard-Perregaux is, and some of the, again, post 2000, and there's no silicon in it. But I don't think Girard-Perregaux went with that anyway. Hi, Clyde. Also, watchmakers that add a module on top of a movement like N8C. Clyde, yes, this is a good point. This is what I was saying about, if you look at Vincent Calabrese's watches, he tells you, he said they got an ETA something something in them, and then they have this other module on top of them that he made for them. There are a lot of really interesting ones, and I think those are ones that will hold their value as horology, but may not hold their price, which means we can get them at a lesser price. That's a great example, Clyde. Ah, okay, Forbin, thank you. So they got the shape, the, okay, now this is, Forbin, are these Hamiltons with the 982? Are these sort of a new revival of them with the movement being revived? Because we're not talking about vintage. These are all pre-vintage. In fact, we'll say post 2000. This is, there's some time. One of the tough things to find right now anyway is that there were a whole lot of watches made both by a company named Roger Dubuis and one by Daniel Roth. Roth later became associated with Bulgari for a short, well, like 1 year. And who else? Gerald Genta. I don't think Bulgari made very good use of Bulgari, which is a watch that I happen to like a lot. I think they really didn't do a very good job using. Here are these two brilliant um, watchmakers and designers. Okay, yeah, Forbin. Oh, okay, the vintage. No, okay, the vintage one. Okay, let's skip the vintage ones. I mainly it's nothing against vintage. I mean, this is a lot of things. People get really upset. You don't like this, you don't like that. I don't own a Rolex, and people say, "Oh, you're a Rolex hater." I'm not a Rolex hater. There's just other watches I like better. I think that's important too, and I think there's some really nice Rolexes. So I'm not, and kudos to Rolex for not using the silicon hairspring, even though they have it. And I think they put it in their I think their Pearl Diver watches or one of the ladies' watches they had. They put it in that, but the rest are the parachrome with the made of chromium and niobium, and those were the ones that were used in that. High Desert Plains Drifter. Ah, okay. RGM has one. Forbin, that's a great example. The problem with RGM, two things. One, you don't get much of a break on the price. I've always looked at those. I've always really sort of hankered after one. In fact, they even have one with the seven, let's see, what the Jacquet 736. This is one of my five watches with a Jacquet 736, and I wouldn't mind at all having one by RGM. The problem is the RGM ones are pretty expensive, and they're very rare, hard to find. There are a lot of watches that are really great ones, but um, people don't want to sell them. I mean, you for example, you can buy a brand new Harboring 2. Okay. You buy a Harboring 2 and a Harboring 2. You don't find those on the used market too often. You find some, but not very often, especially like the Felix. They were inexpensive. They're beautiful, wonderful watches. They keep on working. And so people don't want to sell them. But if they do, they're usually a good deal. Hi, Thomas. How you doing? Hi, Salam Anami. Good evening to you. Salid Al Naimi. I hope I don't mispronounce that too badly. Um, okay, so those are some that I think are worth thinking about. There's another one. I think it's by yeah, it's Daniel Roth Papillon Butterfly, and it's really interesting because it's a very unusual looking watch, and it's got sort of this something. It's sort of like this horseshoe shape with a retrograde and a bunch of other neat stuff in it. And then what the interesting thing is that when Daniel Roth was at Bulgari for 1 year, they came out with one that was very much like it, and so those are some things. I got to tell you one other one too, and it's just nuts. Nuts because they're out of them. Um, that blasted Chaumet Dandy Arty open face. Got to tell you about that watch. Uh, I don't know of any other one available except for one that's in gold, and that's 20 something $1,000. And I was looking closely at how the mechanisms that ran between the center and then the eccentric. In my case, it's a Ferris wheel, and other ones it's a second hand. But the one you can see, and you can see these two um, gears by Agenor called Agenais gearing, and they have these little springs, and each tooth is split, and then they have a spring. So when one of the teeth of the other one gets in there, you don't have any slippage. And why that's important is that when and this is true with any subsecond or something like that, you have a little fluttering sometimes. And what these agonist gears do, agonase, I guess, the gears do is they stop that. And the thing about the Dandiarty open face, or the one with second hand, is that not only is there an eccentric second or a subsecond, but it's way over here, and so you end up with two of those gears. I think that Dornbluth offer brilliant quality for good money, and the brand Zeitwinkel also do some really nice work. Yeah, a couple German brands. Yeah, those are good examples. I was fortunate enough to see Laurent Ferrier sport Auto Blue at a watch exposition here in Qatar yesterday. I can say now that this is my next watch. I hope to pull the trigger on it soon. Did, uh, Sully, did you try one on or pick it up um, on the Laurent Ferrier? The reason I say that I was looking at some in New York a couple of years ago, and they felt awfully light. And I like watches with some kind of heft in it, but that was may have just been the ones I was looking at. So no. Okay. All right. What are some other ones that we can go searching for that might be fun? You know, I'm trying to think the name of it. One of the videos I made not too long ago, I think it may have been, there was an older model. I'm trying to think what it was. I forgot the name of the model, but it was like it was it was a square shaped model, and I can't rectangular model shape to it, and it may have been by Jaeger-LeCoultre, but I'm not sure. It was really a cool model on it. Hi, Howard. I think that us gringos about RGM. Okay. Emailed him on a Sunday. He emailed me back personally, and my order was in the next day. He is no doubt open to personal visitation, but I live too far away. Um, yeah. What's his name? Roland. Roland Murphy's a really nice guy. He looks like a guy that you an older guy who fixes motorcycles. That's he doesn't look like a watchmaker. He looks like a guy that you'd expect to be, a place you bring in your Harley and he works on it. But very, very down to earth guy. I like him a lot. Oh boy. Yeah. Side a titanium would be even lighter than that. I don't know. Like I said, I like watches with a certain amount of heft. And I didn't, I maybe because I was surprised, but they're beautiful watches. I really like the designs of Laurent Ferrier. Aha. With summer, we get a few ants. They decided to, one of them wanted to audition. Um, Geezer, uh, I agree. But those are from like the 80s, right? Is that correct, Geezer? The Roth era brigades. That's like it's sort of like uh, Gary. What's his name? Derek Pratt. He's another guy. Now he was with uh, he was a buddy of George Daniels, And even though he's English, he spent most of his career in Switzerland working with Urban Jurgensen. But if you look at those things, they again, Urban Jurgensens always were expensive. Uh, when they had a big clearance sale not long ago, and I was able to get one at close to half price, but I couldn't afford one otherwise. And you have some of those that come along. Carrier and Lonnen bought them, and I don't know whether they'll go up or down. That's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But you're right, Geezer. What the thing is, I have never tried to find a Roth Air Brigade because I don't know what they look like. I don't know what their numbers are or anything else, but it certainly would be one worth finding out about. Salim, yeah, they're light but sturdy. Oh, I'm sure they are, and they're extremely well made. According to Watchbase, Cartier Crash uses a caliber 9618 MC. Okay, the Cartier Crash, and there's another one by Cartier that I would love to have, and it's called the Follet something Follet, and it looks like it got run over by a car, but it works perfectly. Really interesting one. Richard Garrick. What a surprise that Richard. Yeah, Garricks are pretty good ones. 80s and 90s. Okay, Geezer, thank you. Good question, Thomas. I don't know about that. Are they Marines or Classiques? The ones I like are the Classiques. I like the ones they still have, as a matter of fact. Excuse me asking about it, but for that price, is the movement well priced for it and will cost me around 56,000? Oh, if you're talking about Lawrence Ferrier, yeah. Uh, Lawrence Ferrier's his stuff is really beautiful. He's got probably one of the most interesting, what is it, regulators. I really like his regulator. I got a cheap one from China that it's actually pretty good, but just so I could have a regulator, and I first saw one of his. No, I think that if you talk to people who own Laurent Ferrier's, that's the best way to find out about them. Captain Kirk, your point was that silicon seems somewhat benign as opposed to a foreign element, but I understand your stance. Thanks, Captain. Yeah, is that quartz is made up of silicon and oxygen. Now, if somebody wants an accurate watch that's not going to magnetize, the heat and cold isn't going to change the shape of the hairspring. Like I said, I mean, if you run down to get a Patek Philippe and say, all I care about, I could care less about what's inside of it. I like Patek Philippe's, and one that keeps good and accurate time would be that. Okay. But before that, I had a Patek Philippe, an old. I mean, that was definitely vintage. That thing was that thing was beautiful watch, just beautiful. The movement was like just great, but it was it's too small. And one of the things about some of the vintage watches, some of them tend to be pretty small, like 32, 33 millimeters, something like that, even smaller. That's something else too. I like them around between 39 and 38 and 41 is sort of my sweet spot on that. And that depends on different people. I think people who prefer watches with smaller um, case diameters, man, you can find all kinds of really great watches. I happen to like the ones with bigger ones, which is probably they're not as available and more expensive simply because they're more popular size. Um, oh boy, what happened here? Okay. Yeah, this is something Paul's point about getting on waiting list. You have to get on waiting list. I while back I talked to a guy at Restaurant Content 10, and there's a waiting list for overseas now. I mean, just a sort of plain vanilla overseas, and you have to get on a waiting list for those. Same thing with some of the heritage models that H. Moser has. So this is sort of trying to find ones that you don't have to be on a waiting list for. You can get them for a pretty good price, and they haven't stuffed them full of silicon. Okay. Hi, Christian. Uh, who do you look up to or for inspiration? Oh, that's easy. Agenor. Uh, if if you go through the Grand Prix prizes, you'll see all these companies that have won a Grand Prix award. They some do, but most don't mention uh, the module or what part that Agenor did. And to me, they're my favorite. They were ones that are really great. Uh, those would be my number one. I think FP Journe. I really like FP Journe. I really like Rolf Lang's work. I think his stuff is brilliant. Uh, those would be the main ones. Okay, you're out. Yeah, it's out late. The Galais Square. That is one I like a lot, Thomas. Paul, you're right. I agree. I agree with you. I think Jaeger-LeCoultre has one of the best values. To me, the reason behind it, I think, this is my own reasoning. They started not as a watch company, but as a movement company. And they were making movements for Patek Philippe, for Vacheron Constantin, for Audemars Piguet, some really top movements. And I guess at some point they figured, well, heck, why should we use, let them have all of our movements and we can make them ourselves. And they've made a line of watches that are very reasonable. Um, oh God, they are owned by Richemont. Okay, and I don't know what Richemont has done. I do know one thing that Richemont seems to do is they seem to cut down on the number of models that a company has, and they got rid of their entire geophysic line of watches, which were to me the best ones they had. Uh, and so this is one of the things we got to talk about that someday, and that is to what extent do companies like big group companies like Richemont sort of stifle the real creativity. You're not, no one's going to stifle Laurent Ferrier's creativity or F.P. Jones because they own the whole works. Carrier and Lannon, same thing. Uh, but a friend of mine who used to be a GPHG judge, who was a big fan of Allanga. He was a German guy. And he told me, he said, after Richemont took over, they sort of lost a lot of the more creative things and were focusing on sort of just mainstream. And I think that's one thing that Richemont has a tendency to do. And so, somebody says, hey, we need more in our R&D budget to create new things, and it doesn't happen. From this morning's, yeah, okay. Nino, Certina DS series seems to be gaining traction in the marketplace. Good value for the money, even with a 2824. That was the one I was trying to think of. The 2824 and the 2849. I think that's it. Both are really popular, good, excellent, really excellent movements. They're not high horology or anything like that, but they're really good ones. Man, I tell you, let me tell you one exception that, and this is sort of weird. The Duchess of Cambridge was wearing a balloon blue, and she was photographed wearing it. And I don't know whether it was quartz or hand wound or automatic, but I was talking to someone at uh, the that great big in New York City. They have this huge Jaeger-LeCoultre shop, and I was talking to her about it. Man, she said those things are just flying off. Anyway, guys, listen, I'm out of time. My timekeepers didn't help any. Um, are you a fan of Daniel's coaxial movement? Is it that much of an improvement, a step forward? Oh yeah, it's really a good one, Captain Kirk. I mean, yeah, I do like it. Uh, it's a funny kind of thing, though. I think some people think it was sort of came out to be, a new genius, and by now, I think anybody who wanted to could probably use it because of the patent laws and so forth. They wouldn't have a problem moving using it, but they still most of the escapements are the Swiss escapements. I don't know. I would like to have one though at some time. I really would like to have a watch if I can find maybe a pre-silicon Omega. Get one of those. Okay, guys. Thank you all for putting up with me again. and, uh, if you have any further thoughts, put a note in the comments and see you later.